Welcome to the Movies of the Damn podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter at Damned Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Alexander Aja's 2003 slasher film, High Tension. The movie follows Mary as she travels to visit her friend Alex's parents. The trip is soon disrupted as a strange man shows up, kills the family, and abducts Alex. Mary then fights to save Alex and ultimately kills the man. However, in the end, it's revealed that Mary actually imagined the entire situation, with her being the one who killed the family. Alex ends up stabbing Mary, who is then locked up in a psychiatric hospital as the film ends. John, opening thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, so I saw this a few years ago, and I suggested we watch it again because I think it's a pretty good slasher horror type film, and I thought it was that way because of how gruesome some of the scenes were, and how I thought it actually delivered on the title. I thought there was a lot of tension created in this film, and I
Yeah,
enjoyed.
I was about to say the same thing. The title describes it perfectly.
Yeah, so I was very satisfied with that, and I thought I'd watch it again. And then, I saw some stuff on online where people were either hated this film or loved this film. They had like a lot of plot issue problems and progression problems and character problems, and then other people were just like, yeah, I just got to overlook that because it was so good, and this is why. And after I saw that, I was a little confused because when I first saw it, I really enjoyed it. That being said, after watching it again, I still really enjoyed it, but I can kind of see both sides now of why there was such criticism of it.
And so what you're saying makes sense, and I kind of went through the same thing because just like you, I saw this when it first came out. Now, I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it on at the time not Blu-ray, sorry, a DVD soon after it came out, and I loved it. But I hadn't watched it again until we just watched it for the podcast here, and my feelings were very similar in that the first time through, I absolutely loved it. The twist ending blew me away. But then when I knew about the twist ending the second time through, as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, well, based on the ending, this doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. So it'd just be interesting to kind of go through it and just kind of talk to some of those points, because as you said, after seeing it a second time, I can see what people didn't like about it. I still enjoyed the movie, but I can see what people have issues with.
Yeah, so it wasn't extremely strong in the plot department, or maybe not in the plot department, or just tying it all together department, because there were some strong ideas there. And actually, what it reminded me of, have you ever read Dean Koontz's Intensity?
Oh, that's so hilarious. I made a few bullet points here about that, but go ahead.
Okay, so that's what it reminded me of. So a guest in the house, killer shows up, kills everyone in the family, doesn't know that there's that extra person there, that there was a guest that ever showed up, and then leaves not knowing that. So it's kind of the same thing there, but in Intensity there was it wasn't a split personality thing or a delusion thing. The killer was real, and the person followed them for various reasons. And I thought it was an excellent book. It was very intense as well. But back to this film, when I first saw it, I wasn't really blown away by the ending. I didn't really see it as much of a twist. For me, it was more like at the time when the movie came out, there wasn't that many gritty horrors like that. There was more, the smart teenager horror type, scream type thing going on in the background there, right? There wasn't a lot of movies where it's just like you had something thrown at you so violently, and it took you a while to digest what you just saw or what you experienced. And that's why I really liked it, because I thought, okay, this is different. I don't see this type of film very often, and I was kind of glad to be witnessing that, right? But in the second time, I felt the same way. But yeah, there were. I would say the second time though, there was I saw more of the plot holes than I did the first time through. You know, I did see
Yeah,
some in the first time, but they're very glaring the second time.
well, and that makes sense because obviously some of the tension is lost the second time through. The first time you're watching it and you're rooting for a character or not rooting for a character, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you're on the edge of your seat throughout. But then when you know what's going to happen, obviously you can start picking some things apart. But just to rewind for a second before we go too far forward, in doing some reading online, I picked up a couple points, as I said before, about Dean Kootz's. How do you say his name? Dean.
Koontz, Koontz.
Yeah, his novel Intensity. So several viewers of the film noticed a striking similarity between the plot of the film and of that book.
Mm-hmm.
The director acknowledged that he read the novel and was aware of the similarities. And then on his website, Kuntz stated that he was aware of the comparison, but would not sue because he found the film so disgusting and so intellectually bankrupt that he didn't want the association with that would come if he pursued any sort of type of legal action. So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Intellectually bankrupt.
Yeah, that was his quote, intellectually bankrupt. Yeah, and so
Kuntz has a really good way with words, so I kind of like that.
yeah, so I just thought it was so funny that you brought it up. But yeah, I guess there was some accusations of plagiarism for this movie.
I would say what was very similar was the very beginning, right? So, um, exactly what that was: a stranger coming to the house, murdering the family, not knowing there was a visiting guest. That, other than that, that is pretty much the only similarity. After that, intensity goes off in a totally different way, and this film kind of goes well. So the character who's a killer in High Tension follows, gets into the truck with the killer, hoping to save her friend. In
Yeah.
Intensity, the house guest follows a killer as well, hoping to save her friend as well. So that's actually very similar as well. It's just where it diverges is between the killer and the character, right? So in High Tension, the killer and the heroine are the one and the same, whereas in Intensity, there's a whole other subplot going on top of that murder. Actually, like, Intensity was so good, so good. This
So this was
movie,
like almost a watered down version.
well, it's only in the way that this was uber violent. So I think this movie had uh, that's what it was trying to draw. Was trying to draw the uber violence, or maybe trying to accentuate the uber violence. Whereas Intensity, it was trying to accentuate more of, I would say, the tension, because there was great tension in that film, in that book. I mean, there's good tension in this movie, but sometimes the violence distracted you from it.
Well, because it was crazy violent,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, right? And you kind of you almost got shown what you're getting yourself into almost right away with just some crazy images and crazy scenes. So when the murderer, we'll call him, is first introduced, he's like sitting at the side of the road with that decapitated head, like that.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
crazy.
that was crazy.
And then so it's like you kind of know what you're signing up for right away, and
Yeah,
then and then things are crazy violent. Like when the father's killed, he kind of has his head through the banister, and they
mm-hmm.
pushed what was that, like a dresser up against him, like that was
Yeah,
pretty wild too, right?
yeah, and
And so you're right, tons of violence.
and then the way the mother was killed was pretty over the top as well. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Especially with the when she wasn't dead and her throat was still cut wide open like that,
yeah.
and I thought that was pretty gruesome. I'm glad they didn't show the murder of the child.
Buddy, I have that exact same thing written
Yeah.
down here. Like it was terrifying enough to see the child run into the cornfield, and
hmm
then you hear the gunshot. I'm really glad they didn't show that on screen
Yeah,
either.
I think a lot of people know there are certain no-nos, right? You don't really want to show any real violence to animals or children, right?
But when they do the violence to animals, you always hear that dog whimper, and I just hate that sound
I know
too.
I hate it too, but it's like they don't ever do it like they do to the people. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see dogs getting eviscerated, or you know what I mean? Like, you don't see that as you would with that happens to people in the films, and I'm like, I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't want
Yeah,
any
yeah, yeah.
animals getting hurt or children getting hurt in that degree in movies that I watch. I won't. I I turn it off. I would turn it off for sure.
No, no, and of course, I don't know if I would turn it off, but I wouldn't enjoy it. And if we were reviewing it for the podcast, I'd definitely bring up the point, right? But no, I agree with you back to the original statement that I'm glad they didn't show the young boy, the brother dying in the cornfield. But then so kind of at this point as the viewer, you obviously have no idea that this fella doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You throughout the vast majority of this film, you're kind of following the two girls, and their names again are Mary and Alex,
Mm-hmm.
as they're kind of they're fighting for their lives against this killer. And so I found myself rooting for them the entire time, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat. Will they survive? Will they not? Kind of midway through the film, you get to my favorite scene in the movie, at least. The full sequence that happened kind of at the gas station
Yep.
convenience store type thing.
Yep.
Like I just thought that the tension in that scene was incredible.
It was.
Like
Yeah.
when he asked the storekeeper to, what did he want? Get him alcohol or something like
Yep.
that, and the storekeeper knows something's up because he's already seen the one girl,
Mm-hmm.
and then it ends up getting the axe to the chest. Like
Yeah.
that was
No.
just a really good scene
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But then when you look back to it based on the twist ending, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, a lot of it doesn't make sense. So let's break it down a bit here, okay? So at the very beginning, there's foreshadowing, right? Remember at the very beginning, she has a dream
Oh,
where
she has the
she's
dream in the car.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then she says in the car, right? I had a dream I was chasing myself.
Yeah.
That's what she says, and then so like right there, you like if you can't really know, you wouldn't be able to know from that what the movie was about, but you get a strong idea that there's some sort of foreshadowing going on, and you don't know exactly what it's going to be. And then
Yeah.
secondly, the question is, she acted like she never knew where Alex lived, right? Oh, is this where you live? Oh, I've never been here before. These are your parents, that type of thing, right? You
Yeah.
know, like they were driving. Oh, how did you find? Like they made a point of, like, oh, this is the road to your farm. Like it's really rough. Like she's never been there before. That's the sense that I get that she's never been there before, right?
Yeah.
W- How is Alex transported? Did that truck even exist?
And so that's the point I'm going to bring up too, because at one point the truck is being driven with both girls in the back.
Yeah.
And so, John, I can look at this and they can say, well, perhaps she imagined that entire sequence, and maybe she imagined most of the movie. Um, but some things are real, and you know they're real because you see it at the end when it's kind of been revealed to the viewer that this man never existed, and it's just the two girls. So the truck is real. Where did the truck come from?
Yes. And so,
Her
but
in
here's
her injuries are real. Like before the other girl stabs her, she had injuries on her head. Where did those come from?
yeah. So what my point was though is like, so if the truck is real, we're both saying that the truck is real.
Yes.
She had to have parked it by that house before
So
she
where'd she
went up.
get it from?
Yeah. No. So before she went to her friend's house, where she didn't know where she lived.
Okay, yeah, yeah, okay.
So how did she get that truck? First of all, how did she park it there beforehand without knowing where this friend lived?
Impossible.
Right. So like I think that's a glaring hole right there. And um, and then secondly, like I think we talked about this before. It feels like a lighthouse problem. You don't know what's real.
Yeah, you really don't. And but the reason why it wasn't a problem for me
Mm-hmm.
is because I was so into it throughout.
Oh yeah.
And so
So
it wasn't until after the movie when you're thinking about, wow, that was a crazy twist ending. But then what about this and what about that? So it wasn't something that bugged me in the middle of the movie, like it bugged me in the middle of the lighthouse.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, and that's true. Like because the first time through, and that's where I think this movie kind of excelled. The first time through, there was a lot of tension, and there was a lot of violence, and those two things were done so well. They distracted you from the glaring plot holes that normally you would be fixated on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like you could think about the truck and why it's real and why it's not real, or the gas station attendant keys, and you know, like she was chasing herself in the men's urinal, and all this type of stuff. You could think, whatever you want about that, right? But at the time when you're watching it the first time through, you're in that film. You're not thinking about those other things. You're thinking, oh my God, this is pretty intense. I don't want this girl to get killed. This doesn't seem fair. Like, you
Well,
know what I
because
mean?
you're rooting for her, right?
For
Because
sure.
she never made that bad decision, other than the fact, like, I guess you could call it a bad decision from a self-preservation type of standpoint, because she was putting her life on the line to help her friend.
Hmm.
But like there was no like awful decision, so you're rooting for her the entire time.
Well, yeah, you certainly buy in. You definitely have a buy-in. So, and there's a lot of things where you wouldn't think they're the same people. They do a lot of misdirections. So you see her struggling with when she's in the house and the killer first shows up, and she's cleaning up after herself to show that there's no one in the bedroom, right? Wiping everything down, which is the exact straight scene
Yeah.
from Intensity, by the way. But anyway, so she's doing all that stuff,
Oh, okay.
and she struggles to pull that bureau out from the wall, right? 'Cause she's going to plug the phone in. She struggles
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hell, struggles like hell to move that thing. And then later on, she pushes the dad's head through the banister railings and pushes that heavy bureau across the floor into his head to decapitate him. So
Yeah.
in one instance, she wasn't strong enough to do it, to move this bureau. And the second one, she's strong enough to shove it across the floor, taking off a man's head. So there's stuff like that where you think there's no way you would think they're the same person. There's no way.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense because it wouldn't be possible.
Well, they showed you that, right? It would
Yeah.
have been different if she like squatted down and lifted that bureau like it was nothing, and then pushed, and then later on you're like, oh yeah, she is strong. Remember, because she did this. So yeah, you could see that they're the same person, but they don't do that. They make a point of showing how she struggles with something really heavy, and then the next scene, because she is the killer, she pushes that thing across the floor like it's not a problem.
No, I can't argue with any of that. And what they needed for me is kind of when there was that realization that she's actually the killer, they needed to have more flashback sequences of showing like what actually was real, where there was a couple, but there wasn't enough.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like they did. I think what was it in? Yeah, it might have been in Fight Club when they're showing scenes about Tyler Durden and going back, and they had like uh,
Yeah,
video
of what
scenes.
actually happened.
Yeah, so like they could have had the perfect opportunity in that convenience store, having someone look at the video from the convenience store and seeing how she actually operated in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like so you do the scene over again, but from the view of the camera, so it's only her doing what she does.
That's exactly what I wanted, John. I wanted
Yeah.
to like so that we could say that the first half or the first, I guess, four-fifths of the movie was just all in her mind, and then they just show us like a couple minutes of flashbacks to show what actually happened and how it was possible. But since they didn't show how it was
Hmm.
possible, then I have to throw my hands in the air and be like, what happened here?
Well, yeah, because they're so. You could say like the gas station clerk was acting odd, because he was acting odd, because she came in, and then what'd she do? Come back up and talk to him in like a man's voice, or tried to project herself as someone different and asking for alcohol. Like, was she two people in that store at the same time? Which part was real or which part wasn't? Did that gas station attendant actually exist? Did that whole scene exist? Who knows?
Yeah,
Right? So like,
you don't know.
no, you need something to tie it in. We know what happened to her friend's family was real, because at the end she's looking at her through the glass, right?
Yeah,
And so you know that was real. But after that, I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. And so that's a problem if you dissect this movie too much.
Hmm.
But to anyone out there who hasn't seen it, it is currently on the unrated version is on Amazon Prime right now.
Hmm.
You can watch it there. And if you're just looking for a good like tenseful slasher film with some scares, now it is gruesome. You're gonna enjoy it as long as you don't think into it too much. Because as you're gathering from the first bit of this podcast here, the more you think about this, the more issues that will pop up. But as far as a movie going experience, you're going to enjoy watching it.
Yeah, so like I said, like the first time I saw it, I enjoyed it. I definitely did enjoy it. And I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy it the second time. I'm just going to say that there had more concerns with the issues the second time, right? So like you mentioned it earlier, like she does have injuries at the end, so like part of her was, uh, so some of the stuff at the end had to have happened, had to have happened to her, right? But like
Yeah.
but you don't know what sequences are real or not, right? You just
Like, did
don't
she
know.
cause the injuries to herself? Did she
Like who
hit
knows?
herself in the head? Like,
I don't even know, right? So and then so her she pushed that tire iron through her, right? And which I was like, oh come on, you could not push that through someone like that. Like she was like within, it's like the Bruce Lee 1 inch punch. You couldn't do that. So
yeah,
I was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, no, this is not happening, right? So like Bruce Lee could do the 1 inch punch. I just mean like she was so close to close to her that she just kind of slowly pushed the end of a tire iron through her, through the body of her, out
Yeah.
through her shoulder blade. Like that, that just wouldn't happen. There's no way.
And then how about right before that when she like wanted a kiss from her? That was just
Yeah, I know.
wild.
I
That's
know.
all. The only way I can describe that is wild. I'm like, what are we watching here?
I know. It was like I said, the first time was like very, very powerful. Like it was very distracting with how how tense and gruesome it was.
And now, John, I know, and I always ask you this, and it's tough to put yourself back to the first time you watch it, but I was kind of doing some thinking, and I remember the first time I watched this movie that even though there was that clear foreshadowing with the dream at the very beginning, the twist ending caught me off guard. I didn't see that coming at all. Can you kind of put yourself back a little bit and remember your thoughts, or kind of you erase that from your memory?
So it's one of those things that it's hard for me to remember the exact what I felt. I don't remember feeling shocked. I remember feeling that's interesting. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
it could have been more along the lines of yeah, I didn't see it coming, and that's interesting that they threw that out there. But I might have only thought it was interesting because maybe I intuitively had problems with the plot, but I didn't articulate it or care to think about it too much. Then you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I'll say from my end, I was completely floored.
Mm.
Like, pick my jaw up off the floor. I'm like, no way, it was her the entire time. Like,
Mm.
I just, and it's just so funny because you don't usually get that switch in a lot of movies where you go from like really rooting for someone, really caring someone for someone, like hoping that they're okay, to being like they're the bad person,
I know. I know.
right? Like, and
I
so
know.
it's an interesting premise. It's a cool idea. I just felt they could have pulled this off with just a little bit longer of a montage, as I said before, at the very end, showing what actually did happen.
Yeah, they would. They needed to tie it together. They definitely needed to tie the impossibilities together, right? Or just even rewrote some of the scenes where you wouldn't be dumbfounded. You know what I mean?
Like, you can even show that this was a truck that the family owned and was like parked out back of the house, and she came upon it or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Like,
know?
something, and then as you said, when they're in the gas station convenience store, she comes in and is like hiding around the shelves, and then just like walks up to the front like nothing happened. Like,
Yeah,
that would freak an attendant out,
yeah, for sure. Right? That would
right?
really, that would have been pretty good actually. And then what would he do? He wouldn't know how to react. He would have been fine. She would ask for alcohol. He would have got it. Right? Like it wouldn't have changed anything, but it would have showed us a lot. Right? So
Exactly, and
yeah,
I think you could have done that effectively, and maybe only added a minute, maybe two, to the film.
yeah,
Um, Again, though, I don't want to criticize this too much because I did enjoy it. The acting of the main girl was fantastic.
for
The
sure.
the, the
Yeah.
young lady who played Mary, like, and I think the best spot that pops to my mind when I really want to talk about how good the acting was at the very, very end when she's in the psychiatric facility and she like looks towards
Yeah.
Alex,
Yeah.
and like with that, like, I would almost call it like the Joker smile,
Hmm.
and like arms extended towards her like wanting a hug. I'm like, oh my gosh, like she is nailing this character.
I know. I know. I know. I
So
thought,
just,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, because it makes you wonder about a lot of things, right? So there's all those pictures of other women in the truck. So like,
Yes.
it makes you wonder if those were real people. It makes you wonder if that decapitated head was real. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much that I want answers to, and I think if they put a little effort into supplying those answers, this movie could have been really, really great. maybe not
Yeah,
great because it did have a lot of glaring similarities to Intensity, but um, it could have been like I don't know. I think it would have elevated it to another level. That's for sure.
like even with all this stuff, I still say this is a great film, John. I say this is a very good film. Like
Yeah, I agree.
it, if you're looking again for just an enjoyable movie watching experience, you flick on a movie and you're not going to look at your watch, you're not going to think about something else, you're going to be engrossed in the film for 2 hours. This is a great example of that. It delivers.
For horror though, like so you will it for it is very stark, it's very gruesome, it's very gritty, and if you like horror, you will like this film. You will like
Yeah,
this film. Yeah.
especially if you watch the version on Amazon Prime, because
Hmm.
as I already said, it's the unrated version,
Yeah.
and so it's a little bit different than I guess the theatrical version that came out. In
Hmm.
the reading I did, it has about a minute of extra stuff in it, like a minute total.
Yeah.
Basically, they had to cut off like the ends of most of the kill scenes because of how gruesome it was in order to get it at that R rating in theaters.
Hmm. And
Um,
like it's just it's very hmm. Like I think any horror fan would like the horrorness of this film. I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Now, looking at Rotten Tomatoes, as I always love to do, John, I completely disagree with the critics here. They have it at 41,
Okay.
and the audience has it at 67. Now,
Hmm.
me personally, I'm going to be a little bit higher. I'm going to be in the mid to high 70s, if I have to give it a score of 100. But what are your thoughts on the critics and the audience score? Do you think it just is the fact that it's too gruesome, and some people might have problems with the end? Like, do you think that calls for the thumbs down?
No, I think there's a couple of issues there, right? So one is the plot holes, right? The plot holes for a critic who's watching it and it's their job to dissect it, they would have a problem with a lot of those plot holes. And secondly, you'll never find a critic who is favorable to I guess implied plagiarism. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
yes.
there's a lot of or inferred plagiarism because I'm not saying that there's plagiarism done here. I'm
Well,
saying
but
there's
buddy, I have it written down here. I read you that whole thing that
yeah.
there's a lot of people who are claiming it, so it's not just you.
No, I'd say it's very very striking similarity. Like yeah,
Yeah,
it's very very yeah, it's very very close. I think the only difference in the high tension film is that the killer and the heroine were one and the same. That would be it. I think a lot of the rest of it's almost similar, except for intensity. She follows him back to his house, and he's holding captive a little girl, right? So that's another huge issue, and she's stuck on his property and trying to escape in the book. And there's
yeah.
Dobermans on the property, and like she has to figure out a way to try to get off the property, contact the police, and get help for the little girl who's trapped in this place. And also, the killer is a police officer in the book.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so there's a lot of differences as well, but there's also a lot of similarities. Um, so I would say I'd say that's a huge thing for critics. So any type of implied or inferred plagiarism, nope, it's immediately a thumbs down.
Yeah. And then the gore, as I've already said, I think a lot of critics hate that. So maybe that's why there's the thumbs down. Now I told you I'm in the mid to high 70s.
Hmm.
Where are you at? Because I
I
think
think
you're
I'm
thumbs up as well.
for sure. I'm thumbs up as well for sure. I'm a little higher than the audience. I'm going to go with a 70.
Okay.
Definitely a 70. Maybe the first time I saw it, I would have given it a 75, maybe an 80. But seeing it the second time, there's just too much that it's hard for me to overlook a second time. Still didn't make it not enjoyable. You know what I mean? But I say 70 for me is what I'd give it.
Very interesting. Budget made for 2.5 million, ended up bringing in 6.8. However, Lionsgate got behind this movie huge for its US distribution and ended up spending 14 million on marketing.
Oh wow.
So so Lionsgate didn't do too well on this one.
Mm.
One another cool fact I found out is that when it was released in the UK, it wasn't called High Tension. It had the title Switchblade Romance,
Oh,
which I think is a kind of like it's a kind of a cool, catchy title.
it is, but you'd almost infer what was going on from it.
And that was going to be my next point. That as soon as you say Switchblade Romance, it's like, oh, I think it almost gives it away, and that's
With
probably why
that
they changed
title
it.
and the foreshadowing at the very beginning with the dream, I think it would have been problematic.
Yeah, maybe it wouldn't have floored me like this one did.
Mm.
No, very interesting. Well, buddy, anything else to add on this one?
No, not really. What about you? You got anything?
Uh, Only thing that I have is I want to bring up our the movie that we're going to be talking about next week.
Okay, one,
Next week,
one. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say next week we're going to be talking about The Descent. So
Yes.
for those of you with Amazon Prime, uh, throw that movie on, watch it, and listen to us talk about it next week.
And this is interesting because a huge horror fan that I am, I haven't seen this film. I have not. And I keep hearing really, really good things about it. And then, Kyle, you told me there's some differences that you're not too happy with. So I can't wait till we talk about those differences
Uh,
between the UK and the US version, correct?
but by not so happy with, you mean furious. But we're gonna get into it next week, and you folks can hear my fury with the US version. But again, don't want to ruin it. Watch it on Amazon Prime. Listen to us discuss it next week. Join us and join the conversation, as John always says.
That's right.
Well, folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at Damn Movies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers. You can also order his novella Balance, his book of short stories, Four Shots of Horror, and his newest novel, Off the Grid, all available right now on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week. Be kind to everyone.